Brilliant. So yeah, I've got a reasonable number on, so I think I'll kick off. Thank you everyone for joining us this morning for Workwhile's fifth knowledge sharing webinar. So this is our series of expert panel events that we've been running for just over a year now. And so this one is on the topic of rethinking traditional criteria. So the unconventional paths that people can take to entry-level roles and looking at what we can do to improve person specifications and entry criteria for those kind of key routes into careers for the first time. To introduce myself, my name is Emma McWalter. I'm Programme Manager at Workwhile, and I'm joined by a wonderful panel this morning representing both smaller and larger businesses that are very active in the apprenticeship space and also with those entry-level roles into the business, and also from the college and training provider perspective as well. So the panel will introduce themselves more formally a bit later on, but just to give anyone who is not familiar with Workwhile a bit of background to us as an organisation, at Workwhile, our vision is an equitable world of work, one where everyone has access to meaningful and lasting employment. So we work with employers to create good work and ensure that everyone has access to it. We do this in quite a few different ways. So we've got four kind of major areas of activity. Firstly, which is our tailored free support service to SMEs about everything to do with apprenticeships. So that's a large part of my role, and that's open to any small businesses based in London. Essentially, my colleague AJ and I, we help people right from a standing start, not knowing anything about the apprenticeship landscape or how it works, right up to getting funding in place and helping with DAS accounts and everything to do with selecting the right standard and training provider. We also have our levy transfer brokerage service, which has supported to date over 1,500 new apprenticeships for low paid and disadvantaged and marginalised Londoners. 56% of the people we've supported so far into apprenticeships have been aged 25 or under, and 45% of those have been from Black, Asian and minority ethnic backgrounds. As well as that, 36% of the people we've supported into work weren't in full-time work prior to their apprenticeship. So yeah, supporting them through out of unemployment, but also from part-time or freelance work as well. This levy transfer service has benefited over 350 SMEs across London, and we really couldn't have achieved this without our fantastic levy donors who have pledged to date over 15 million in unspent apprenticeship levy funds that we then redistribute to smaller businesses where it can have more impact. Thirdly, our developmental apprentices line management training is something that we're fully funded to deliver to support apprentices once they're in work by supporting their line managers and helping their managers support their apprentices and vice versa. So that's really to boost retention and progression. Yeah, we're fully funded to deliver that service to SMEs in London that meet our criteria, and we're just organising our sixth cohort of that training programme at the moment. And lastly, we also have our consultancy services, which are designed for larger organisations on good work practices and wider sort of workforce planning as well. So yeah, a bit of background to this webinar series. So we launched it back in November last year. And this was due to our kind of distinctive position within the landscape of skills and employment as an intermediary organisation. Through interacting with businesses of all sectors and sizes, as well as training providers, other charities, and other third parties, we do have quite a unique perspective across the skills landscape. And we thought it was really important to share, what we're learning by talking to all these different types of organisations with our network as much as possible. So this is just one of the ways that we encourage that best practice and knowledge sharing across the network. So to come on to today's topic, this is one that I personally have been banging the drum on for sort of as long as I can remember, and something I'm really passionate about. So ensuring that there's realistic and practical entry requirements and person specifications, particularly for entry-level roles. So that can be apprenticeships, but also other entry-level positions as well. I think we've all at some point in our lives been stuck in that kind of catch-22 of not meeting a minimum entry criteria or a certain number of years of experience to get into a role, whilst at the same time being desperate to start work in either a new sector, a new role, and really just gain that experience and learn on the job. I'm a firm believer that these can often be arbitrary, and sometimes obviously qualification requirements are essential, but for those entry level routes to really kind of reconsider that, take a step back and think about what's necessary in terms of GCSEs, A levels, other types of qualifications, for example. And yeah, it should be really backed up in terms of when you're asking for those and why, especially to new starters in industries. So this is something that's been brought to the fore through the distance between employers' expectations and also the recent lived experience of young people. So we do see that across the UK, we're still facing a vast skills shortage. We know that the introduction of the apprenticeship levy is still encouraging more apprenticeships at the higher levels for those who are already in secure employment. And that was kind of how Workwhile came to exist back in 2020. So Workwhile exists to try and tackle that trend and share funds to support those smaller businesses, where also young people are more likely to be part of the team. And so yeah, set the scene a little bit more for today's discussion, some recent reports and research on the area. So The Guardian reported just on Sunday from a survey that was done by the British Chambers of Commerce, and this found that 73% of the almost 5,000 companies that were polled had faced hiring difficulties in the last quarter. So that's July to September. And at the same time, I went to the parliamentary launch of the Youth Voice Census for 2023, which is a great project conducted by the Youth Employment UK, not-for-profit organisation, where they survey over 4,000 young people. And that's young people ages 11 to 30, so not just school leavers as well. And the lack of work experience available has come up as an issue every year that survey has been conducted for the past 6 years. And this year has again featured as one of the biggest barriers for young people securing work. So over half of people said that they'd experienced that barrier. And also over 55% had said that their learning had been disrupted in the past year. So we know what's been happening, obviously, in terms of industrial action, also the pandemic. But yeah, I think we need to remember the kind of impact that can have on young people's confidence when applying for roles as well. Workwhile and the IPPR also published a report back in May this year called Joining the Dots, which found that the fall in apprenticeship starts that's across the UK has disproportionately affected the intermediate apprenticeships, so those are your level 2s and level 3s. And again, yeah, young people are finding it difficult to kind of get what they need to progress into those roles, even at the level 2 and level 3 as well. And yeah, we just think it's really important for employers to kind of listen to the results of that census, and also as the majority of respondents also answered the Youth Voice Census saying that the roles that they wanted asked for higher qualifications than they currently hold, and also that the person specification had too many requirements, again come up as some of the biggest barriers when they're filling in that survey. So in today's session, we're going to be tackling this discrepancy and understanding how forward-thinking businesses of today are ensuring that they attract young people into those roles, and how they can make that recruitment process inclusive, accessible, and predominantly driven by skills and potential and attitude to work rather than traditional qualifications. So to hand over to the panel, I've got joining me today Daksha Skansalas from Pretobunje, Katerina Damkova from IQ and IT, Jackie Chapman from Capital City College Group and O1 Founders, and Sophie Hayter from N Family Club. So I will pass over to each to introduce themselves a bit more formally. If you could let us know a little bit more about your role, a bit about your organisation, how you've worked with us so far, and any kind of short, brief career history of your own career history, if that's okay as well. So Jackie, could I come to you first, please?
Thank you, Emma, and lovely introduction overall. My name's Jackie Chapman. I'm the Executive Director for Growth and Partnerships at Capital City College Group, and I'm also the CEO of 01 Founders. The College Group is the largest FE provider in London, and we have about 30,000 students. We have just under 1,000 apprentices. Pre-pandemic, we were always working about 2,000, so we haven't recovered our numbers in the same way a lot of individuals haven't, and there's multiple reasons for that. But because of the apprenticeships, we have worked with Workwhile, both in their current and previous, I can't think of the title for the organisation, and with AJ over a long period of time, mainly helping a lot of our SME market to access apprenticeship levy so that they can get training for their new apprentices with no cost. My interest in this area is very personal. I have not been eligible or met the person spec for any job that I've had in the last 20 years. That's because almost every job that I would be looking at in this person spec requires a degree. I don't have one. I fell out of school. I fell into hospitality, then I fell into training, but I've worked very hard to work my way up. And you heard from my job title, I've not done bad. But what I've found in doing that is women in particular will not apply for a job if they don't meet all of the person specification, which is mad, because often the transferable skills that we've got are quite considerable. So I would say, let's rethink the person specification for what do we actually need in terms of skills and behaviours, not what do we need in terms of specific qualifications, etc. So just a quick introduction, Emma.
Brilliant, thank you, Jackie. And Sophie, could I come to you next, please?
Hi everybody, my name is Sophie Hayter. I am the Apprenticeship Manager at N Family Club. We are a group of nurseries, mainly in London, but also in the South East and the Midlands. I joined N Family Club about 18 months ago in a newly created role as Apprenticeship Manager. When I joined 18 months ago, we had 12 apprentices. We've now got just over 120. So I've worked really, really hard the last 18 months to promote apprenticeships within the business and support our talent team to bring in new apprentices. I came to N Family Club after working for a college and 2 training providers over a 20-year period. So I've been a trainer within early years. I've been a quality assurer. I've been a quality manager. So when I joined in, I sort of came my full circle, if you like, because I'd started my career in early years. So this job combines my passion for early years with my passion for apprenticeships and supporting young people to get into what I think is the best industry in the world.
Brilliant, thank you, Sophie, that's great. And Daksha, could I come to you next, please?
Yes, hi, morning everyone. So I'm Daksha Stancelis. I'm the Talent and Development Partner at Pret. I look after the UK market and specifically apprenticeships and commercial qualifications. I've been doing it for 5 years. I have been at Pret for 10 years. Prior to working in the L&D space, I was working as the executive assistant for the board of directors. And I guess my previous experience, I actually did do a degree in law and psychology. And when I was working for a few law firms, I then had my son. And at the time, I then went on maternity. Coming back from maternity, I wasn't sure if going back and working in a law firm would be ideal, managing a family. So actually just touching on some of the points that Jackie mentioned about having transferable skills, I was then looking for something where I could still bring value with everything that was taught to me, or the skills that I had, but equally manage family life as well. And I think a lot of organizations don't think about women, and you always want to be a good mother, you also want to be a good worker. So luckily for me, when I joined Pret, it was a 3-month, actually just a temporary role, and then from that it then moved to a permanent role, and here I am 10 years later.
Fantastic, that's brilliant, thank you. And Kat, could I come to you now, please?
Morning, everyone. I'm Kat. I'm the CEO of IQ IT. We are a small managed IT and security service provider based in Kingston. We've worked with Workwhile on levy transfer for one of our apprentices. So thank you for that. We've had a bit of an unfortunate issue with an apprentice whose apprenticeship provider has been revoked, and because of the age difference, there was then additional funding which we needed to be paid. So that has helped us a lot. In terms of sort of my role in my career, as I've always been so very technical, so I've studied IT, got my bachelor's degree while working, and then I got my master's IT and education while I started running IQ and IT back in 2008. So although I have degrees, I've never actually needed them in terms of my career. I've never been even asked for my A levels. And I don't think that a piece of paper really matters that much as skills. I think that's very important. So I've sort of always hired and interviewed people on the basis of what their skills are and what they can bring into the business, rather than sort of looking at, oh, well, you've got a fancy degree, because that doesn't necessarily translate into people being able to do the job. So I'm sorry to hear that Jackie has gone through something like that, where she wasn't offered a job. Obviously, if you're applying for being a doctor or something like that, of course you do need to have a degree, but a lot of careers, as soon as you have few years of experience, that matters a lot more. So yeah, so I have been running IQ and IT for nearly 14 years so far.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, everyone. Great to hear a little bit about your kind of personal histories as well. So thank you for sharing that. Brilliant. So just to jump in to the questions for the panel today. So Sophie, I wanted to come to you first to talk about N Family Club. And I know we've got quite a new relationship. I've been supporting you with those pure apprentices, as you refer to them. And yeah, I was wondering if you could tell us a bit more about what pure apprentices are at N Family Club and why they're important to the growing of the business.
Hi, so our pure apprentices are our entry-level roles. They're for candidates who've just recently left school or college. So most of them are sort of 16 to 18, and it's kind of their first job. Or sometimes we do have a slightly older pure apprentice who wants to change careers, but they have no experience in our sector. So, you know, our entry criteria for these roles is very small. We just want people who are going to be enthusiastic about working in the sector and are going to make a difference to the children that we care for. So we have up to 6 pure apprentices per nursery, depending on the nursery size. And these apprentices are nurtured right from the beginning. They're allocated a mentor who is there to support them throughout their apprenticeship. And that is really key for that pure apprentice to be successful, is having that mentor in place. They start as what we call floaters for their first 6 months minimum, to provide them with the opportunity to work with all of our age groups and participate in a variety of learning experiences. So we don't base them in one room, that means they move around the nursery. As well as being enrolled onto their level 2 or their level 3 apprenticeship, they also have access to our internal training academy, which includes opportunities for their off-the-job training to complement their apprenticeship as well. So that works really, really well. The early years sector, I don't know if anyone's familiar with us, but we are sort of currently in a bit of a recruitment and retention crisis. There's simply not enough qualified educators out there to fulfill all the roles. So by bringing in these entry-level sort of pure apprentices, we see this as an opportunity to offer high-quality training for young people and support the future talent of the sector. We currently employ 60 pure apprentices across 26 of our 31 nurseries. And what we've also done is we haven't gone and just paid the apprenticeship wage either. We pay considerable amount more for our pure apprentices, and compared to a lot of our competitors as well, we're sort of paying sort of £3.50 more an hour than what our competitors do. So I think that's been a key reason why we've been able to recruit as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, and it's great to hear about the pay as well. Our last webinar was on that particular topic, which is again one that we care a lot about. So yeah, I mean, in early years sector, we do hear, you know, similar to kind of health and social care, where people do tend to switch companies for, you know, an extra pound or two an hour. So if you can offer that from the get-go, there's so much more reason for them to stay and for them to develop within M Family Club. So that's great. Thank you. And Kat, if I could come to you now, I know before we talked a little bit about your experience with hiring young people into the pathways at your business, and your experience with the Kickstart scheme as well. Could you tell us a little bit more about that, please?
Yeah, so we do sort of try and look for the passion and where people excel within the roles. So we have come across sort of apprentices who started in the sort of IT side of the apprenticeship, and then we recognize that actually their skill set is more within people and management rather than the side sort of the pure IT side. So we have changed the apprenticeship type into a different apprenticeship, and they have sort of not struggled, they've excelled and have been doing really well, and they're about to get their level 5 degree in the next week or so, I believe. So that was a really successful journey for that individual. And the whole Kickstarter scheme, I think, was really, really great for young people and allowed us as a small business to acquire a talent which we wouldn't have otherwise been able to acquire. So we've taken on about 6 Kickstarters, and out of the 6, we've retained 3 of them. Couple of them haven't quite worked out for various reasons. One of them has completed the Kickstarter program and went off to get a career where he went into being employed in Lidl in the specific area he wanted to work with. So we have helped him to basically prepare him and get him some skills to land that job. The other 3, 2 of them went on to apprenticeship, and one of them we've taken on directly as an employee. And yeah, it's just so much easier to have the time to see what their potentials might be, and it's very difficult to do that in sort of 20-30 minutes interview, or just to sort of even sort of give a chance to someone who might have completed a degree but in a different industry, and sort of see what the potential might be, because you don't know how they're going to be able to adapt. So I think that's something which the government could really do with making that transition into work easier for young people, and make it easier for especially small companies like us to be able to take on new talent and just try and work out where they could fit and what their career path might be within our business. Because we are a growing, flexible company, so quite often there is a lot of redefining and changing roles. We've changed one of our other apprentices over from sort of IT into marketing, because she sort of prefers that and is more creative. So it's not always that, you know, they set on their path and that's the way they have to go down. So having that additional time, especially if you take on an apprentice, they might think that they know what they want to be doing, and then when they actually start the job, they go, oh, it's not quite what I've imagined. So it's having a little bit of a time for them to really understand what it means to work full time. Sometimes they might have not worked at all, and just give them the ability to discover what their true passion is for. And I think that's the key for us, to make sure that we have everyone passionate about what they do, because then it's so much easier, and it's not a job, it's something they enjoy doing and they look forward to doing, rather than looking at the time and thinking, oh, can I go home yet?
Yeah, exactly. That's brilliant. And I think, yeah, through kind of paying close attention to the apprentices and those kind of regular one-to-ones is where you can have those conversations about, you know, whether it's meeting their expectations, whether they've got interests in other areas in the business. And it sounds like that works really well for your team. So thank you. Brilliant. And Jackie, I was just going to come to you now to talk to us a little bit more about O1 Founders specifically, for anyone who's not familiar with kind of how that part of the organization works, and how you've managed to shift some employers' mindsets around kind of focusing on that computer science degree, and kind of how that's shifted.
Thank you. For those that don't know, O1 Founders is a coding school. So the college has been working on qualifications for a long time, but talking to a lot of employers, there's obviously a massive tech skills gap at the moment. So we are one of 3 investors in O1 Founders, which takes people from any background and any age and any ethnicity, and just test them for the ability to be able to learn how to code. So we're looking for a skill set rather than for an academic background. And then we work with them to help them to learn how to learn, because within the tech industry at the moment, individual languages will become obsolete within 2.5 years, and they have to continually adapt. Now, we talk to a lot of employers. We've been running for 2 years now. We've got our first graduates going through, and employers initially were saying, but they're not doing a degree. They don't have a computer science degree. How do we know how good they are? And we did work with them to say, well, you've put computer science degree or a specific language on your job spec so far. How's that gone for you? And a lot of them do run graduate programs, but they've found when they do take on a graduate, a degree in its own right doesn't say that somebody's got that skill set. They've got a certain amount of knowledge. They would have, depending on where they did their degree, what areas they specialised in, but they may not have done any work at all, and therefore don't have the behaviours that they require in the workplace. And the employers were spending 6 months to a year on expensive graduates to get them job ready. So we work with the employers to say, what is important to you? And what's important to most tech companies is people who are problem solvers, who can communicate effectively, who can adapt to different code, and can really work within a team environment. So we took all of that and we've put that into our program. And actually, we're now seeing that our students with no qualifications at all are passing the entry test for employers at a much higher rate than graduates are, because the employers have shifted to measuring the skill and the behaviour of the individual rather than the piece of paper, as Kat was talking about earlier on. I say it's taking time, gradual shift, and I think it goes back to something that Sophie said earlier on about the expectation of what people do on day one. You cannot take somebody into a job who hasn't done that type of job before and expect from day one they know what you want them to do. There's a lot of assumed behaviours from managers to think, well, they've got that job, they'll get on with it. But particularly if you're talking about young people, setting the standards about the mobile phone goes off is a very simple starting point, but has to be done. So as long as managers go through the expectations in a reasonable manner with new starters, regardless of their age, then you actually get off to a much better start.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, go.
No, I didn't want to interrupt. I said it's a slow shift, but I think we're being helped because there is such a tech skills gap that employers are willing to consider other avenues and more diversity. Initially, a lot of employers were coming to us for the diverse hire because our student group, we've got about 200, is naturally about 70% from ethnic backgrounds and about 40% female. But what we're trying to turn them away from this is not a diverse hire. This is an expert talent hire that happens to be diverse. So it's also changing that mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And yeah, I had the pleasure of going to one of your events and speaking to some of the people on the course that are kind of at that crucial stage of switching from the academy learning to looking for work, and some really interesting backgrounds, people that had young people, but also people that had basically run their own businesses before, people that have degrees in other very academic qualifications and have then gone into coding. It's really seems to be one of those areas of interest that attracts people from all kind of career histories. So yeah, really nice to see.
Thank you.
Brilliant. So, Daksha, I wanted to ask a little bit more about Pret's entry-level roles and your team members and how you look for those certain behaviours and sort of skills beyond academic qualifications for those.
Thank you, Emma. Yes, so at Pret, when we are recruiting for team member roles within our shops, we don't actually look for specific grades or qualifications. One of the key things for us is behaviours. We actually assess people on their behaviours, and the way we do it is our managers are trained to look for 4 key behaviours. So it's clear communication, passion, great execution, and team working. So when they do apply for a role at Pret, and they sort of complete their profile details, the key question we ask them is, why do you want to come and work for Pret? And what that creates is a starting conversation for when they are invited in for an interview. So our managers will invite them in for the interview, and during the interview, they really focus on those behavioural questions. So they'll say, "Oh, give us an example of when you've worked in a team." So if you think about a young person who's come from a school environment, it's easy, or it should be easy for them to explain that I was in a football team, and and explain how they supported their football team to be successful, whether it's scoring a goal. And what we're looking for is for them to actually understand what those principles mean in a workplace environment. So, if you don't pass the football to your team player, you're not going to be able to score the goal. So in the same way, if you're working in our kitchen environment, then equally, how if you don't turn up on time to work, or if you're sick, then the team is 1 player short. So that impacts production, it impacts sales. So we really simplify things down to that level. And we're not saying that they've got to have created a project where they've, solved sustainability issues. It's really about, let's see how you can pull that together. Can you communicate? Obviously, give us an example where you've maybe communicated some instructions to your teachers or to your friends in school, and really sort of harnessing any hobbies and interests that they have. So the interview normally takes about 2.5 hours, and it takes place in the shop. So what we really want to do is see their behaviours in the shop environment. So they do get an opportunity to also carry out some work, if that makes sense, just to sort of see what it would be like. And through that process, when we're looking at the behaviours, and we're looking at the values as well. So we do have 4 core values: amazing standards every day, never standing still and doing the right thing. And the managers explain all of those concepts during the interview process. So the person has a real understanding of the type of organization they're getting, would be getting involved with. And that actually forms the basis of our entry level roles. And then the aspiration is as they grow, there's more behaviors that are then tagged on. So, if you become a manager, it's thoughtful leadership. What does that mean? So if you are a young person or even somebody who's changing career, because of the way that we actually promote that, we do get lots and lots of people applying, and all from different backgrounds, which is great for our managers because they have so much to choose from. But equally, it means people don't need to worry about what grades they've got, what qualifications they've got. It's really about, can we see your passion coming through? We can teach you how to make a sandwich, but we can't teach you how to be passionate about making sandwiches.
Absolutely. And yeah, brilliant to hear more about that. And we discussed previously about how it's quite localized as well. So wanted to touch on that. I mean, one of the things we see time and time again is obviously traveling to certain different parts of London, if it is far away from where the person lives, can put a strain on over time and can be one of the reasons that people end up leaving roles or are getting new positions elsewhere. Could you talk to us about how you encourage local recruitment with those roles as well?
Yeah, sure. So all of our shop managers manage their recruitment. So they understand what their shop needs are, they understand what the team needs, what roles are coming up. So when they advertise their roles, they advertise it through our website, but they do specify obviously the shop address. And what the managers are encouraged to do is when they're looking through applications, they look for those that are within 30 to 45 minutes traveling distance at the most. And we encourage people to also consider that when they're applying for roles within our shops. Main reason being because if you are doing an early morning shift and you're having to travel in quite far, for the first couple of weeks, that might seem exciting, but after a long period of time, and obviously for us, we want to retain our staff, it may not be manageable. And, you know, shortly down the line, they will end up leaving. So for our managers, it's about investing in making sure they've got the right person for the right job, and that that person understands that you might be coming in at 5 o'clock in the morning, you might be coming in at 7 o'clock in the morning, but how can we make your journey into work easy? So it's not a reason for you not to come into work. And we do see that as a barrier. So we try to overcome that by putting in those time scales. And also, if you think about just young people as well, at the moment, nobody's going to want to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and get into work at 5. So for our young people, we also say that they're not allowed to start those early shifts. They can come in at 7 o'clock. And also our managers do provide some flexibility and say even 8 o'clock is reasonable for them to sort of come in, just so that they can get used to those early morning starts. And when they do turn 18, that's when we would probably ask them if they wanted to come in earlier. That question gets asked at the interview stage. They do ask them about their travel, which then obviously helps set the scene. And at that point, they do also, manage the expectation so that the team member who has applied knows clearly this was the journey in. And some managers even go as far as mapping the journey for them. So, okay, so you need to get this bus or you need to get this ship. And that's really helpful. So if you think about a young person who's always been reliant on their parent, sometimes they don't have the confidence and haven't really thought through what the best journey is for them. So the managers do have those conversations and encourage a different route that might be more easily accessible. And we found that that actually does work really well. And it's because it's so localized, it makes sure that we're also supporting the local areas and where our shops are based. So again, if you think about a lot of our shops are in London, some are in sort of socially disadvantaged backgrounds, and some of the data that we pulled show that a lot of the people that we are hiring are from the local area, which is obviously what we want to do and support to reduce unemployment in those areas.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think that the relationship between people in their local area and their community really shines through that. And yeah, not all organizations go as far as checking the distance that person's taken to work every day. And I think that's really important, particularly, as you say, for young people that might be traveling there, might be the furthest journey to work, or their first time in work, or further than where they were going to school as well. So yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. Sophie, if I could come back to you and discuss a little bit more. I think there's been some questions in the chat as well about the kind of maths and English element of apprenticeships. So I know that you focus on that, and there's a support system in place, particularly for those level 2s and 3s, so school leavers and beyond. Could you tell us a bit more about how that English and maths works with the apprenticeships and how you support that journey at Family Club?
Sure. So obviously, whilst we don't have any sort of minimum entry requirements for our pure apprentice roles, we also don't want to set anyone up to fail. So it's really, really, really important that we look at their maths and English when we decide what role or what level of apprenticeship we're going to offer them. Particularly that in the case of early years, those people that do a level 3 apprenticeship also need to have maths and English at level 2 to have license to practice in ratio as well. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, if you like, maths and English and early years. So when we have any applications for an apprenticeship, we, as well as looking, at their reasons for wanting to enter the sector and their personal attributes and their behaviours, we obviously have to look at their maths and English and assess those. So we get our pure apprentices do their initial assessments right from the beginning. So even pre-interview stage, they do their initial assessments. If they don't have a level 2 in maths and English, or their initial assessments do not indicate that they are working towards level 2, we will always offer the level 2 apprenticeship rather than the level 3. That ensures that completing the apprenticeship is achievable for them, and that the individual will be able to work within the qualified ratio at level 2. So that's our benchmark. However, if an apprentice doesn't meet the minimum maths and English requirements to even access the level 2 apprenticeship, so if they've got an entry 1 or entry 2 level, we do have the option of employing them as an unqualified educator and then supporting them to complete their functional skills only. If we feel that they've got that potential, you know, we don't want to lose that person just because they haven't met the minimum requirements for maths and English. So we'd support them to do their maths and English standalone, and then hopefully if we could get them to get to level 1 in maths and English, then we would be able to offer them the level 2 apprenticeship afterwards. So yeah, it's really important that you get that right for that apprentice. You know, as a trainer, it was heartbreaking to have apprentices where the employer just said, oh, I want them to do level 3 no matter what, and then they work hard to complete that level 3 sort of early years element, but then not be able to use it because they can't pass maths and English. So that's really, really important to us at end, that we don't set anyone up to fail, and that we do enroll them on the right level of apprenticeship, or like I said, bring them in as an unqualified educator if need be, and offer the apprenticeship later on once we've improved those functional skills.
Yeah, that's great. It kind of seems like there's sort of no wrong door, it seems, for no matter your level in terms of those maths and English, but also just previous kind of educational background, there's always a way that you can support them to develop, and I think that's really great and very, very well thought out. So Kat, if I could come back to you, and if you could tell us a little bit more about your hiring practices and how you kind of look for that passion and talent, potentially using kind of activities outside of work, and how that plays into the culture at IQ and IT as well.
So as I mentioned before, passion is really what we're looking for, and that's what we sort of try and find out from our candidates, to see sort of what their hobbies are, what they're doing in their spare time, what interests them, and sort of explain how we work as a company, what we do. So we're not as sort of we just come in, work, and then we go home and don't speak to each other. So we have geographically diverse workforce, so having a sort of level of online and offline games, and also sort of making sure that our team does meet once in a while physically as well. So we have various activities which we do, like go-karting or escape rooms, are very good for sort of team building activities. But you can do sort of online escape rooms, you can do other things like cocktail making, which is one of the requests we have from one of our engineers up in Scotland. He would like to do that. So it's that's something we're going to be doing soon. Doing sort of various activities like Christmas parties. We've done our Christmas party in November last year, just to make sure that we can get everyone in, and we're actually going to be doing that again this year, just to sort of make sure that people who live quite far away don't have to sort of make the decision that actually they can't come because they want to spend time with their families. So we do activities, we do meal together, we do sort of Secret Santa, that sort of stuff, and just sort of encourage people to interact outside work as well, and make sure that that the team sort of gets on well. Obviously, not everybody enjoys the same activities, so we try and make sure that we cover other activities. So it's not all just sort of playing games online and stuff like that, which most of our team enjoys, but it's not everybody. So we're trying to be inclusive, and in terms of the inclusivity, we have neurodiverse workforce as well. So we're trying to sort of do as much as we can in terms of making everything more accessible. I've actually been on a panel together with one of our apprentices who's autistic, on a panel with a local college, and actually going through the sort of hiring process and making sure that you sort of take that into account. Things like sort of maybe sharing interview questions with them and stuff like that, which is actually one of the things we don't do. So it's one of the things I want to sort of bring in and then make sure that it's more accessible. Things like doing online interviews. So we do online interviews as well, which makes it easier for neurodiverse people to feel more comfortable. That's sort of things like if you say take a seat and you've got lots of chairs, it's no, just go and sit here in this specific chair, which actually came out yesterday, which made it really easy for our apprentice when he came to do an interview with us, because he's been pointed to a specific chair. Seems sort of pretty obvious that you just pick a chair, but for some people it's not. So it's also taking that into account and make sure that the rest of the team understands that, you know, their behavior might not always be as you would expect. So we make sure that the rest of the team is also trained and understands what their behavior might be, or if they upset them, to come to us to make sure that we address it. We explain that perhaps that isn't the best way to address something. And we also have sort of training to make sure we address that as well from the professional side of things. So yeah, just sort of putting all that together and making sure that we are hiring the person who's best for the job, not who has a degree or has the right amount of tick boxes on their CV.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. In terms of the kind of hiring process, there's quite a lot of, I've been trying to do more research on this myself, quite a lot of elements of it that aren't very neurodiverse friendly, just in lots of different ways, and that there are kind of small things you can put in place that really make a big impact on that. And I think with our first webinar we did on recruitment, we talked about sharing interview questions before interviews, and yeah, I don't know why it's not more commonplace. I think it's a really good idea. And then there are other little elements that can really help people feel prepared and just feel comfortable as well, because it's obviously a nerve-wracking experience for everyone, but particularly those who might be feeling slightly more uncomfortable. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. Sounds like you've got a really good culture of listening and integrating people within the teams and supporting them as well. Brilliant. So we're almost coming up to time for questions from the audience, but I was just going to ask one more question to Jackie. We talked a little bit previously about your experience with JD Sports as an example of how they've kind of changed their strategy with hiring people into those entry-level roles. If you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Yes, of course. Although having listened to Dasha now, I think I'll just put them in touch with Prep, because you've got it sorted. We were first asked to help fill approximately 200 jobs across London, but initially the team came with a very traditional view of what they were looking for full-time people who've got retail experience, people who are ready to start from day one. And in today's market, you're not going to fill your jobs like that. So we sat down and worked through with them what they were really looking for. And part of their ethos was to help people in the local community to get into jobs. But if you are targeting people who this is either their first job or they haven't worked for at least a year, sometimes it's returning mothers, sometimes it's people who have been out for medical reasons, expecting them to go straight into a full-time job and be reliable in a full-time job is probably optimistic, shall we say. So we were looking at how they could adapt a lot of the roles to say, if there was somebody who was looking to start in the industry, what does a beginner job look like in terms of hours, start time? I think it was mentioned about travel time and what time they could actually get to the stores. So really looking at what the needs of the business were and what the client group were likely to be able to do to try and get a better marry up. And actually what we've found now, because we've reset the expectations of the managers, the interviews are now more about the people. So instead of coming in and having that list of questions, what retail experience have you got? What are your childcare arrangements for some of them? You know, instead of a lot of traditional questions, it's now, tell me about you, tell me about what you want to do, and what any of your barriers are, and let's see how that will fit into one of our roles. So it's changed it from, as you say, a job spec to a conversation with a real person. And actually, we believe the retention will be much better as a result.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that flexibility in terms of hours, although obviously it's very different for different sectors and different roles, like how present you need to be, whether it can be hybrid, whether you're customer facing, there are still ways to make that accessible for people, whether that's part-time or, you know, with a kind of changing shift patterns. It's just about putting that framework in place, isn't it? And yeah, it might sometimes be a little bit more work, but I think it pays dividends in terms of keeping people. Yeah, I mean, recruitment and getting new people in all the time is definitely one of the biggest costs to a business. So being able to retain who you've got already, I think, is really, really key. Brilliant. So yeah, now we are very happy to open out to questions from the audience. I know there's been a couple in the chat already, and I think Jackie's done a great job of kind of answering one of them. But perhaps if we could just get you to talk about that as well, in terms of how young people can join the O1 Founders Programme. And I know it's free to access and it's a very level playing field. So if you could tell us how that works.
Absolutely, because I'm not sure if what I put in the chat only goes to the hosts or to that everybody can see.
Okay.
If you do want to know more about us, we've got a website, www.01founders.co. To get onto the programme, people simply have to play the game. So there's a button there that says play the game. It's a memory test and a logic test, so people don't have to have any coding knowledge at all. They just have to have the right attitude to have a go and keep having a go. And if they pass that test, then they get more information and get invited in. But some people don't like just doing an online test like that. So the other option is on the front page of the website, there are also Eventbrite options for them to click to attend a webinar so we can tell them more, or for them to come and have a go on site. Our site's in near Regent's Park, so we're very accessible, 5 minutes walk from Euston, and they can just come along, talk to other students and have a go. There is no entry criteria, no age, no qualification, no ethnicity. It's just about the right attitude and ability. And as you said, completely free. We will never charge a student anything. It is supposed to be a 2-year-long course to get somebody to be fully skilled. However, because of the cost of living crisis, we have added on a step off onto an apprenticeship at the end of year 1. So after they've gone through and really learned how to learn code and adapt, then they can step onto a software developer level 4 apprenticeship at the end of the year 1, so we can carry on supporting them for another year, but they can get that work and earn money at the same time.
Brilliant, thank you. And this is an open one to any panelists, but David has asked whether anyone uses psychometric tests as alternatives to traditional requirements. I've had a few, tried my hand at a few of those and not been very successful, so I don't know how much of a fan of them I am, but does anyone have any experience in that?
We don't use psychometric tests as part of our application process at all. But for existing leaders, we use something called Clifton Strengths, and that assesses, people's strengths as a leader. It's absolutely amazing. I mean, I couldn't believe how accurate my assessment was. So we use that to support our potential leaders or our leaders to see how that they can grow and how they can move into those leadership roles. So yes, it's not entry level, but I just thought I'd mention it.
We've found that some of the civil service are doing it. So my employability team helps prepare people for jobs in the civil service. And because they get so many applicants, they do an online psychometric followed by then, if you get through that stage, going into a more detailed interview. So we've had to be doing some training with our learners on how to do a psychometric test and how to be as accurate as possible, because you can manipulate them if you know what you're doing, but you also don't want to be scared of them. Otherwise you can come away as a different type of person to who you are. So they're useful in the right context, but it is about how then the information that comes out of it. But Sophie, like you, we've done it for leadership and management. I've just redone my insights and I am quite different to what I was 4 or 5 years ago in terms of my style.
Yeah, I've been told that you can change quite considerably over a period of time. Yeah.
Yeah, we it's funny you mentioned that. We also have done exercises with the Clifton Strengths as the Workwhile team as well, and found it really, really helpful. It's something that we did as part of our kind of team strategy, and then like once you know other people's, you can kind of draw on them and bring them into different parts of projects where you think their strengths are going to be really brought out. And it's a brilliant way to to really look at kind of analyze yourself, but only in like really a very positive way, and be able to kind of develop onto those strengths even further, or focus on areas that are not so prevalent in your Clifton Strengths as well. Brilliant. So we have a few minutes left. So we do one more question, and then I've got a few announcements from Workwhile that I'll close off with before we end today. But Sheila from Islington has been supporting residents with learning disabilities to access paid employment, and has experienced multiple barriers with residents of the borough in this. Interested to find out how, as an employer, you're helping people with learning disabilities access apprenticeships and paid employment, if anyone has any experience there.
So we've got the experience with obviously supporting neurodiverse people, and actually quite a lot of the time you don't actually realize that the person might be neurodiverse. I think from the statistics I heard yesterday, 70% choose not to disclose it to their employers. And about 20% of the workforce you already have is neurodiverse, and you might not realize it. So I don't think it's necessarily always a problem. Sometimes it might be a problem if the employer doesn't have the understanding and what is needed. There are obviously government support in place as well, which isn't the fastest and most easy to complete, but there is some for sort of people with disability. It obviously depends what their disability is, and if they are able to do the job which they're trying to do. And I think the most important is again to have the passion for it. If they have the passion, then just finding a way how the role can be adapted to allow them to complete the role.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are government schemes in place as well about people accessing resources and tools and equipment that they might need at work. And we also are in touch with some other third parties that offer kind of technology that helps with neurodiverse candidates as well. So if you'd like to know more about that, I'm sure we'd be able to help. But yeah, brilliant. Sorry, that brings us to 12 o'clock. So if anyone can hang on for a couple of minutes, just wanted to talk about some developments at Workwhile. So I'm just sharing my screen. You can get in touch with us through our website, through my email address there, or also our info@workwhile.org.uk. We are, as I said, putting together our next cohorts for the developmental program, which is training for line managers of apprentices. That's going to be happening in the next couple of months. If you'd like to put your line managers on that, please do get in touch. It is free to access. We also have a new resource we've recently developed, which is Workwhile Explains the government guidance for apprenticeship employers. So this is a document that's about over 150 pages long. We've condensed it to 6, which I'm very proud of, and trying to give employers all the important information they need from it, rather than reams and reams of legal speak. So if you're interested in that, do get in touch. And we were also working as part of the Apprenticeship Hub network, and we've recently launched a survey through the Hub network, which is all of the intermediary apprenticeship organisations that are working nationally, to gather as much insight from employers as we possibly can, with the idea of presenting that at a roundtable to policymakers, hopefully Parliament and beyond. So yeah, that I popped a link to that in the chat as well, but I'll send it in the follow-up. And lastly, we're also in the swing of delivering our East Bank Shared Apprenticeship Programme. So if you're a business that's based in the boroughs of Waltham Forest, Tower Hamlets, Newham or Hackney, and you'd be interested in benefiting from our additional training and also additional good work support, please do get in touch. And thank you everyone for joining, and thank you so much to our panelists for a great chat this morning.